Hello and welcome back. So in this particular episode, we are looking at sessions. Now, what exactly is a session? Well, a session contains persistent data that you want to move from one place to another in your application. So for example, if you log in a user, you don't want to keep asking them to log in on every single page, right? So you're going to keep that login data inside your session. And once you keep it there, you can simply ask on every page, have they logged in already? And then you can go ahead to show them the content. That way you avoid the annoying, please log in all the time. So even when you close your browser, the session data remains. So even tomorrow, the user can be still logged in into your application. So normally, if you've been doing PHP for some time, you know how to deal with sessions, obviously. So let me go to my, let's see what we have here for a second and see why we can't do it the way we normally do it in PHP. So if I go to my web.php, so web.php is inside routes, web.php. This is where all the routes are, right? So here I have a route to a class, a controller. So I want to use this page users, which has a route to a controller. So let's go to that controller here and do things. So my controller is inside app, HTTP controllers, user controller. So this is the one right here. And we use this to read our database, but we don't want to do this anymore. So let's remove everything here out, and then let's remove that as well. So all we have is a controller that's returning a view, and that view is users. So let's go to the view itself inside the resources, views, user blade. So let's remove everything in here. All right, so let's come back here. We should have a blank page. Okay, that's all good. Now what I want to do is, we don't want to use the view anyway, we just want to use the controller here. So there are several ways to use a session. You can simply call it and say session like this. Okay, normally in PHP, so let's find out why we can't do it the way we do it in PHP. So print readable, usually in PHP you just do it like that and you call your session, right? So I want to see what's inside my session here. So let me go back here and refresh my page. But what do I get? I get an error. It's saying undefined variable session. And that's because Laravel removes the session. It has its own session way of dealing with sessions. So it removes this global session because security, I guess. So then how do we access sessions in here? Well, this is where the whole session thing comes in. You type session like this. It's a function, so you put your brackets like that. And then if I want to get everything inside the session, I'll just say or like that. Okay, so that's a function as well. That's a method. That's a class method. So now if you notice here, okay, let's see the result of this though. So if I refresh, you see that there's stuff in my session here, right? So it's working actually. If I do echo out some pre-tags here, I'm going to say, even though echoing things is not recommended, so you should never do this when you're actually using your application. Don't echo anything inside a controller. So yeah, there we go. That looks much better. Okay, so at least we can see what's going on in here. But now there are two ways to get the session here. You can also use the request because it has a session object in there. So to use request like we had done last time is we're going to cast it as request and then give it a variable name. I'll just call it Rick like that. Okay, so using this request object, if I do that, is just the same thing. So if I do that and come back here and refresh the page, you see I get exactly the same information. So you can use the request object as well, but to avoid complicating things, we're not going to be using that. So I'll remove that. Okay, so now how do we add a value to our session? Well, it's very simple. We'll use the keyword put. That's what you use for adding something to a session. So you say session like that, and then you say put like I saw. And so you give a key, let's say username, and then you put your value there like that. So I'm putting an item in username John there. So if I now refresh like this, you see there's username John with the value of John there. Now, if I do remove this, I comment this out, every time I refresh the page, the value still exists. So if I refresh, you see, I keep refreshing, but the value is still there, even though I added it only once. That's the beauty of a session. And also, it will be available anywhere. If I copy this to my other controller, which is, in fact, not even in the controller, let me go to web here, where I have this welcome page. So if we go to the welcome page, even here, if I try to read from the session, I'm just reading from the session, everything in there, I should find that my item is there. So let's go to the welcome page here so we can see that. Okay, so as you can see, this is the welcome page. Let me zoom out a little bit. That's the welcome page, right? But then we still have John in there. So even though it's a different page, I set it on a different page, I can still access the data from another page. Okay. So obviously, you know this about sessions already. Hopefully you do. All right, so how do we remove an item from our session? Well, so to add an item, we say put, and to remove an item, we say forget, like that. So obviously to forget, we just need the key of that item. So we just say forget username, right? So let's come back here and refresh. Let's go to the user's side, the user's page. Okay, so now as you can see, it's been forgotten. So it's no longer there. So those two things should be enough, like forget and put, right? But there's another way of putting items in here. It's by using an array. So if I have an array, I just call it array is equal to, let me say, I want to add items to this array. Let's say is equal to array. Oh, let me just use the shortcut. Why not? But I need a key, so I'm just going to say name again is equal to John. Let's add one John here. Let's add Mary there. So we're going to call this one name 1, this one name 2, like that. So Mary and John. Or let's just use 1. It's okay. We'll just call it name and then John. And then what we're going to do is, let me mute this forget here. What I will do instead is, I would say put, like that. And then instead of just my username, and I'll put an array there. In fact, let me just put several items there so you can see what's going on. So we have name 1 and name 2 here, and then I am going to put them using an array like that. So if you have a lot of items to add, so you see that now both of them have been added to the list like that in array fashion like that. So if I do this now and refresh, you see they still exist. So let's forget them for now. So we're going to say forget name 1 and then name 2 as well. So let's try that. Let's forget them. Bam, forgotten. Okay, so far so good, I guess. Now, if you have an array of an array, for example, I have these items here, Mary and John, but I want to add them to a single item called names. So I'm just going to say maybe A, like that. Names is equal to, I'll equate this one to an array like that. So it's an array of an array. So the key that will be added to my session is names, right? So let's put that in there. I'm going to put A instead of these ones. I'm going to put A like that, and then let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, names here is an array, and it's got 2 items in there, right? So there. Now, what if I want to add an item to this? I can use the keyword push. So let me mute all this. I don't need this anymore. I've already added. So what I want to do now is to add an item to this array. There's an array existing in here, which this array is called names, but I want to add an extra name there. So what I do, well, what I can do is say I'm going to say, I come back here for a second, session push, like that, right? So push adds an item to a particular array. So this one is names, that's the array. And what am I pushing there? I want to push a key and a value. So name 3. I hope this actually works, but I've never done it like this before. I don't know what name I can put there. Let's try it like that. Let's see what happens. So this is how you add an item to an array. So let's try that, and let me refresh. Okay, so we pushed in an item in there like that. So this is not exactly what I wanted. Yeah, this is what I was scared of. So this only works well with items that that don't have a key and pair. Let's say names. Let me do this for a second. Let me explain what situation this is better in. So we're going to say forget names, just so we can delete it for now. Let me come back here, refresh. Okay, so it's gone. So this only works well if you have an array where the keys are 0, 1, 2, and not, they don't actually have names. So this would work well if I had something like this. Okay, so I add items, John, Mary, and then I add this to an array. And then I'll say put here, put A. So let's put A and see what happens. Okay, so we've put A in here, and this is a list of names. So if I want to add to this list, this is when the push method is going to be useful, where there are no keys and values. It's just an array. So that's where I'll do the push inside the names array. And what name do I want to add? I just want to add the name June, like that. So you can use single quotes or double quotes, it doesn't matter. So what I'm saying is add to the array names, add June. So as you can see, for now the array names has only 2 names, but if I refresh now, we have a 3rd. Okay, so that's how you can use it to push data in there. So we've seen how to forget, how to put, how to use an array to add data, how to... So I had written a list of what keywords are important here. So we've seen put, we've seen oh, this is what I actually forgot. So we've seen put here, we've seen forget. What else have we seen here? We've seen or, we've seen push. Okay, so let's see a few things that the rest of these. So get is obviously for getting a single value. So let's say, because right now we're just reading all of them, right? So I'm going to mute everything here and come back here for a second and refresh. So here we are seeing everything inside here, but I want to pull an item called names in here and echo it. So what do I do? I'm going to say session get, so I can get a very specific item. I'll say get, and then what item am I getting? A one called names. Okay, so let's come back here and refresh, and you see I only have that one item like that. Okay, good. So now that I know how to get, what else can we do? We can do pull. Pull also reads what's in there. The only difference is once I say pull, you see here, it's going to show me exactly the same thing. But if I now repeat the action, I get an empty page. That's because when you do pull, you are reading and deleting at the same time. So you read the item and completely remove it. That's why it's called pull. Now, here you can, so we've done all these here, pull, put, get, forget, and then there's exists. Now exists will check if an item actually exists, and then it will return true or false. So let's check if this key exists, which we are sure does not, so we expect to find a false. Now false is 0, which is kind of like an empty thing. So let's use var dump so it can show us whether it was true or false. So let me refresh, and then you see it's a boolean false. Okay, so it does not exist. However, if we do add it and then put, it's going to tell us that it exists now. So it's now true, it exists. Okay, so that's how you use exists. Missing is just the opposite. You can ask if the thing is missing or not, or you can ask the question has, like this. It's the same thing as exists. Only difference is one, has will return true if the item exists but is a null object, I think. The other one doesn't take care of that. So you can read the documentation here, like I always say, go to laravel.com documentation and then click basics and then go to session. Then you can read all the documentation you want here in case I miss something. Okay, so now we've gone through missing or push, flash. Now flash deletes everything from a session. So if we want to flash everything, let me go here and say all, so we can read what's in there. And then here I'm going to say session flash. Now be careful with the U and A, because even A like this, there's a version that's called flash like that. So make sure it's the one with the U that you are flashing. So flash, and you see now the session is empty because we flashed it. Okay, let me come back here for a second and refresh. Okay, so I get the default data in there, but my own data has been flashed, right? Then there's also regenerate, which will regenerate the ID, right? So a session has a session ID, of course, where because the session is actually a file on your hard drive, on the server's hard drive, it stores all this information. So now if you tell it to regenerate, it means it's going to delete that file and create a new one, which will have a different ID. So it means when you regenerate, if there was anyone who was logged in, everybody will get logged out, because now that particular user will get logged out because you've regenerated their particular session, because the session is very individual to one person. So if let's say there are 10 people connected to your website, each one of those 10 people will have a file on the server that contains their session. So if you regenerate, that session file is going to be deleted for them, and so they'll have to log in again. All right, so this is how you keep persistent data throughout your website. Hopefully you have learned something, because you may have tried to use the normal session like that and find that it doesn't actually work. So this is how you do it instead. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.